It was a crisp Friday afternoon in San Francisco, and the city buzzed with its usual energy. People hurried along the streets, some clutching coffee cups while others juggled shopping bags or briefcases. Among them was Ethan Caldwell, a man who seemed to stride through life like he owned it, and in many ways he did. At just 35, Ethan had built a billion-dollar tech empire from scratch. He wasn't flashy about his success. Instead, he carried himself with quiet confidence, dressed impeccably in a tailored navy suit that screamed power, without shouting for attention. But today, Ethan wasn't thinking about boardroom meetings or stock prices. Instead, he found himself standing outside a quaint cafe on Market Street, feeling oddly nervous. His mother had insisted on setting him up on a blind date, something he'd resisted for months. "You're too busy chasing deals to chase happiness," she'd scolded over the phone earlier that week. Reluctantly, Ethan agreed, mostly because he knew saying no would mean endless nagging. Inside the cafe, the air smelled of freshly brewed coffee and warm pastries. It was cozy yet chic, the kind of place where people came to sip lattes and pretend they were living their best lives. Ethan scanned the room, looking for someone who matched the description his mom had given him. Blonde hair, green eyes, wearing a red dress. But there was no sign of her yet. At the same time, Mia Harper was having one of those days that made her question why she even bothered getting out of bed. A waitress at the cafe, Mia worked long hours juggling tables, taking orders, and dodging complaints from cranky customers. She was in her mid-20s with curly brown hair tied back into a messy bun and dark circles under her eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. Life hadn't been easy for her lately. Between working 2 jobs to pay rent and sending whatever she could spare to help put her younger brother through college, Mia often felt like she was running on empty. That day, things were particularly chaotic. One customer spilled soup all over the floor, another demanded a refund because their sandwich wasn't Instagram-worthy, and the espresso machine decided to break down right during the lunch rush. By the time Ethan walked in, Mia was frazzled but still managed a polite smile as she greeted him. Ethan noticed her immediately, not because she looked extraordinary, but because there was something genuine about her demeanor. She didn't seem fazed by his expensive watch or designer shoes, which was rare. Most people either fawned over his wealth or treated him with thinly veiled resentment. But Mia, she simply asked if he wanted a table for one. "Actually," Ethan said, glancing around the room again, "I think I'm meeting someone here. Blonde hair, green eyes, red dress." Mia squinted slightly, trying to remember if anyone fitting that description had come in. Then she shook her head. "Not yet, sir, but you can wait at this table. It's reserved." As Ethan settled into his seat, fate played its hand. Unbeknownst to either of them, Ethan's actual blind date, a polished marketing executive named Victoria, was stuck in traffic several blocks away. Meanwhile, Mia happened to be standing near Ethan's table when he glanced up and saw her. Her simple black dress bore a vague resemblance to the red one his mom had described, and her friendly smile sealed the deal. "You must be..." Ethan began hesitantly, rising to his feet. Caught off guard, Mia froze for a split second. Was he talking to her? Before she could clarify, Ethan extended his hand. "Hi, I'm Ethan. Nice to meet you." Mia hesitated. This wasn't part of her job description. But something about his calm demeanor, and maybe the fact that she didn't want to embarrass him in front of everyone, made her play along. Hi," she replied softly, shaking his hand. "Nice to meet you too." And just like that, the mix-up began. Ethan assumed Mia was his blind date, and Mia, overwhelmed by the whirlwind of the day, didn't have the heart to correct him. As they sat down together, awkward small talk turned into surprisingly easy conversation. Ethan asked about her day, and Mia joked about how spilling coffee on customers was practically an Olympic sport. They laughed, and for a moment, both forgot their worries. 15 minutes later, Victoria finally arrived, breathless and apologetic. When she introduced herself to Ethan, the truth came tumbling out. Realizing his mistake, Ethan turned beet red. "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry," he stammered, looking between Mia and Victoria. "I thought..." "It's okay," Mia interjected quickly, though her cheeks burned with embarrassment. She grabbed her notepad and pen ready to escape the situation. I should get back to work anyway. But before she could leave, Ethan stopped her. Wait, he said earnestly. Since we've already started, would you mind staying for dinner? I feel bad ruining your evening. Mia hesitated. Staying meant stepping further into unfamiliar territory. Leaving meant walking away from what might be the most interesting encounter she'd had in ages. In the end, curiosity won out. Sure, she said with a small shrug. Why not? Little did either of them know, this accidental meeting would change everything, for better or worse. As the evening unfolded, Ethan and Mia found themselves slipping into a conversation that felt surprisingly natural. The awkwardness of their initial meeting melted away as they talked about everything from their favorite books to childhood memories. Ethan was struck by how easy it was to talk to her. Unlike the people he usually interacted with, executives who spoke in buzzwords or socialites who only cared about appearances, Mia had a way of making him feel like he could just be himself. For Mia, this entire situation was surreal. She kept reminding herself that she was sitting across from a billionaire CEO, someone whose world seemed galaxies apart from hers. Yet, despite the obvious differences in their lives, she couldn't deny that there was something genuine about him. He didn't act like he was better than her, nor did he try to impress her with stories of his wealth. Instead, he listened intently when she spoke, asking thoughtful questions about her dreams and struggles. At one point, Mia shared how much she loved writing. It's kind of silly, she admitted with a nervous laugh, but I've always dreamed of being an author. I used to write little stories when I was younger, but life got in the way, you know? Now between work and taking care of my brother, I barely have time to think, let alone write. Ethan leaned forward, genuinely intrigued. That doesn't sound silly at all. In fact, it sounds amazing. You should go for it. Life's too short not to chase what makes you happy. His words caught Mia off guard. No one had ever encouraged her like that before. Not really. Most people told her to focus on practical things like finding a stable job or saving money. But here was Ethan, someone who clearly understood success, telling her that her dream mattered. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to imagine what it might feel like to actually pursue writing seriously. The arrival of Victoria, the real blind date, interrupted their conversation. When Ethan realized his mistake earlier, he'd been mortified, but now he felt almost disappointed that the evening would have to shift gears. As Victoria took her seat, apologizing profusely for being late, Ethan introduced both women to each other. The atmosphere grew tense, though neither woman said anything outright rude. Still, it was clear that Victoria viewed Mia as competition, while Mia felt out of place altogether. To everyone's surprise, including her own, Mia decided to stay for dinner. Partly it was because she didn't want to abandon Ethan after they'd already started talking. And partly it was because she was curious to see where this strange night might lead. As the three of them ate, Ethan tried to balance his attention between the two women. But it soon became apparent that his connection with Mia was far stronger than anything he shared with Victoria. Victoria, sensing this dynamic, grew increasingly frustrated. So Ethan, she said pointedly during a lull in the conversation, I hear your company just launched another groundbreaking app. Tell me more about it. Ethan nodded politely and began explaining, but his answers were clipped, lacking the enthusiasm he'd shown earlier when discussing Mia's passion for writing. Victoria pressed on, peppering him with questions about his business ventures and industry trends, but Ethan's responses remained distant. It was as if his mind was elsewhere, or rather on someone else. Mia, meanwhile, stayed quiet for most of the meal, feeling like an outsider in a world she didn't belong to. She watched as Victoria tried and failed to recapture Ethan's interest. At one point, she caught Ethan glancing at her and their eyes met briefly. There was something unspoken in that look, a flicker of understanding that made Mia's heart skip a beat. When dessert arrived, Victoria excused herself to use the restroom, leaving Ethan and Mia alone for a few minutes. The silence between them was comfortable, almost companionable. Finally, Ethan broke it. Listen, he said, leaning closer. I know tonight has been complicated, but I'm really glad we met, even if it happened by accident." Mia smiled faintly, unsure of how to respond. "Me too," she said softly. "It's been different." "Different can be good," Ethan replied with a grin. Then after a pause, he added, "Do you think we could do this again sometime? Just the two of us?" Mia hesitated. On one hand, the idea of spending more time with Ethan excited her in ways she hadn't expected. On the other hand, she couldn't shake the nagging voice in her head reminding her of how different their lives were. What could a billionaire possibly see in someone like her? Before she could answer, Victoria returned, interrupting the moment. The rest of the evening passed in a blur, with Ethan doing his best to keep the conversation light. But as the night drew to a close, it was clear that something had shifted. When they finally said goodbye outside the cafe, Ethan handed Mia a small card embossed with his name and contact information. "If you ever want to talk, or write, I'd love to hear more about your story," he said sincerely. Mia accepted the card, her fingers brushing against his for a fleeting second. "Thanks," she murmured, tucking it into her pocket. "I'll think about it." As Ethan watched her walk away, he felt a sense of anticipation he hadn't experienced in years. This wasn't just a passing encounter. It was the start of something he couldn't quite define yet. And deep down, Mia felt it too, a spark of possibility that refused to fade, no matter how hard she tried to ignore it. Over the next few weeks, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about Mia. Her voice lingered in his mind, the way she spoke so passionately about her dreams, the quiet determination in her words, and the vulnerability she revealed without even realizing it. He'd met countless people over the years, investors, entrepreneurs, celebrities, but none of them had left an impression on him quite like she did. There was something about her authenticity that pulled at him, making him question everything he thought he knew about relationships and connection. At first, Ethan tried to brush it off. After all, what could possibly come from pursuing someone like Mia? Their worlds were polar opposites. She worked 2 jobs just to make ends meet, while he lived in a penthouse overlooking the city. He spent his days strategizing billion-dollar deals. She spent hers serving coffee and dodging rude customers. Logically, it didn't make sense for them to have anything more than a fleeting encounter. But logic wasn't winning this battle. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her smile, the one that lit up her entire face when she laughed at his awkward jokes during their accidental dinner date. Determined to see her again, Ethan decided to take matters into his own hands. He started visiting the cafe where they'd met, always requesting Mia as his server whenever he stopped by. At first, she seemed surprised, and maybe a little suspicious, by his sudden appearances. "You're here again?" she asked one afternoon, raising an eyebrow as she set down a cup of black coffee in front of him. "Is that a problem?" Ethan replied with a playful grin. "Your coffee is the best I've ever had." Mia rolled her eyes but couldn't hide the faint smile tugging at her lips. "Sure, blame the coffee. I know you're not coming here for my latte skills." Ethan chuckled, leaning back in his chair. "Okay, you caught me. Maybe I just enjoy your company." Their interactions became a routine. Ethan would show up unannounced, sometimes bringing work with him, other times simply sitting at a corner table and observing the chaos of the cafe. Mia, despite her initial hesitation, began to look forward to these visits. They gave her a break from the monotony of her day, a chance to talk to someone who actually listened instead of barking orders or complaining about cold drinks. During these conversations, Ethan learned more about Mia's life. She told him about growing up in a small town, about how her parents had passed away when she was young, leaving her responsible for raising her younger brother. She shared stories about working late shifts at diners and retail stores, sacrificing sleep and personal time to ensure her brother had everything he needed to succeed. It was clear that Mia carried the weight of the world on her shoulders, yet she never complained. Instead, she spoke with pride about her sacrifices, as if they were badges of honor proving her resilience. For Ethan, hearing these stories was both humbling and inspiring. He realized how sheltered his own life had been, how he'd never truly understood what it meant to struggle. Sure, he'd worked hard to build his company, but he'd always had safety nets, a supportive family, access to education, financial stability. Mia didn't have any of those luxuries, yet she faced life head-on with grace and courage. She made him want to be better, not just as a businessman, but as a person. As their bond deepened, Mia found herself wrestling with conflicting emotions. On one hand, she enjoyed spending time with Ethan. His kindness and genuine interest in her life made her feel seen in a way she hadn't experienced before. On the other hand, she couldn't shake the fear that this was all temporary, that once Ethan returned to his glamorous, high-powered world, he'd forget about her. One evening, after closing up the cafe, Mia finally voiced her doubts. Ethan had stayed longer than usual, helping her clean tables and stack chairs. As they walked outside together under the glow of streetlights, Mia turned to him and said, "Why are you doing this, Ethan?" He looked at her, confused. "Doing what?" "This," she gestured between them. "Coming here, talking to me, acting like we're, I don't know, equals or something. You live in a completely different universe. Why waste your time on someone like me?" Her words stung. Not because they were harsh, but because they revealed the walls she'd built around herself. Ethan stopped walking and faced her, his expression serious. "Mia, I'm not wasting my time. You're smart, talented, and incredibly strong. You remind me of why I started my company in the first place, to create opportunities for people who deserve them. And honestly, being around you makes me feel alive. Like I'm not just going through the motions anymore." Mia stared at him, unsure of how to respond. No one had ever spoken to her like that, like she mattered, like she was worth more than the sum of her struggles. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, someone like Ethan could genuinely care about someone like her. A few days later, Ethan invited Mia to attend a charity gala he was hosting. It was a formal event, filled with influential people from all walks of life, and Ethan hoped it would give Mia a glimpse into his world. At first she hesitated, feeling out of place at the mere thought of stepping into such an elite setting. But Ethan reassured her, promising that she wouldn't be alone and that he wanted her there because she inspired him. With some encouragement from a close friend, Mia borrowed a stunning emerald green gown and prepared herself for what promised to be an unforgettable night. As she stood in front of the mirror adjusting the straps of the dress, she felt a mix of excitement and dread. This wasn't her world. It might never be. But for one evening, she decided to step into it, curious to see where this unexpected journey would lead. The night of the charity gala arrived, and Mia couldn't shake the knot of nerves twisting in her stomach. She stood outside the grand ballroom, clutching her small clutch purse like it was a lifeline. The building was breathtaking. Marble. Floors gleamed under chandeliers that sparkled like stars, and guests mingled in elegant gowns and tailored suits, their laughter filling the air. It was a world she'd only ever seen in movies or glossy magazines, and now here she was, standing on the edge of it, feeling like an imposter. Ethan had greeted her warmly when she arrived, his eyes lighting up as he took in her appearance. "You look incredible," he said, offering her his arm. His genuine admiration helped ease some of her anxiety, but as they stepped inside together, Mia couldn't help but feel out of place. Cameras flashed around them, capturing photos of attendees as if they were celebrities. People whispered behind raised hands, their gazes flickering between Ethan and Mia with curiosity or judgment. Ethan noticed her unease and leaned closer, speaking softly so only she could hear. "Don't worry about them. Tonight is about you, about us. Just focus on that." Mia nodded, trying to steady her breathing. She reminded herself why she'd agreed to come, to support Ethan, to experience something new, and maybe even to prove to herself that she belonged somewhere beyond the confines of her everyday struggles. Still, the weight of everyone's stares pressed down on her, making her wish she could disappear into the crowd. As the evening progressed, Ethan introduced Mia to colleagues, friends, and business partners. Each introduction came with polite smiles and curious questions, though Mia could sense the underlying skepticism in some of their tones. One woman, draped in diamonds, asked pointedly, "So, how did you two meet?" Mia hesitated, unsure of how much to share, but Ethan jumped in smoothly. "At a cafe downtown. She has a way of brightening even the busiest days." His words drew a few raised eyebrows, but Mia appreciated his effort to keep things light. Despite the initial awkwardness, Mia began to relax as the night wore on. Ethan never left her side, introducing her not just as a friend but as someone who inspired him. He spoke proudly about her passion for writing and her determination to provide for her brother. For the first time, Mia felt like more than just a waitress. She felt valued for her dreams, her strength, and her humanity. But the calm didn't last long. Midway through the event, whispers turned into murmurs, and soon, Mia realized something was wrong. A group of women huddled near the bar, scrolling through their phones with smirks on their faces. One man laughed loudly, glancing in Mia's direction before turning back to his conversation. Confused, Mia looked at Ethan, who seemed equally unsettled. It wasn't until later that they discovered the truth. Someone, one of Ethan's closest advisors, jealous of his success and suspicious of Mia's presence, had leaked photos of her online. The pictures showed her arriving at the gala on Ethan's arm, captioned with snide comments questioning her motives. Headlines like, "Billionaire CEO's mystery date, gold digger or genuine," spread across social media like wildfire. Comment sections filled with cruel remarks, accusing Mia of using Ethan for his wealth and mocking her background. When Mia saw the posts, her heart sank. All the insecurities she'd tried to push aside came rushing back. She felt exposed, humiliated, and angry, not just at the people spreading lies, but at herself for thinking she could fit into Ethan's world. Tears welled in her eyes as she turned to him. "I knew this would happen," she said, her voice trembling. "They think I'm some kind of fraud, Ethan, that I'm only here because of your money. And honestly, maybe they're right. This isn't my life. I don't belong here." Before Ethan could respond, Mia grabbed her coat and hurried toward the exit. The cameras followed her, snapping photos as she fled, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Ethan called after her, but she didn't stop. Once outside, she hailed a taxi and climbed in, tears streaming down her face. As the car pulled away, she stared out the window, feeling like her fragile dream of connection had shattered into pieces. Back inside, Ethan was livid. He confronted his advisor, demanding to know why he'd betrayed his trust. "You've ruined everything," Ethan snapped, his usually calm demeanor replaced by anger. "She's not what you think she is. She's real, she's brave, and she deserves better than this." His advisor shrugged, unapologetic. "Come on, Ethan. You can't expect people not to talk. Look at the difference between you two. It's obvious she's after your money." Ethan clenched his fists, resisting the urge to say something he'd regret. Instead, he walked away, his mind racing. He couldn't let Mia go like this, not without fighting for her, not without proving to her that she mattered far more than any gossip or judgment. That night, Ethan drove to Mia's apartment, determined to make things right. He knocked on her door, holding a bouquet of flowers and a heartfelt apology. When she opened the door, her eyes were red from crying, and her expression was guarded. "What do you want, Ethan?" she asked, her voice hollow. "I want to fix this," he said earnestly. "None of this is your fault. Those people don't know you. They don't understand how amazing you are. Please, let me help." Mia hesitated, torn between wanting to believe him and fearing another disappointment. But something in Ethan's eyes, his sincerity, his vulnerability, made her pause. For the first time, she allowed herself to consider that maybe love could transcend differences, that maybe she deserved happiness too. And so, with a deep breath, Mia stepped aside and let Ethan in. It was the beginning of a journey neither of them could have predicted, a journey that would test their resolve, challenge their beliefs, and ultimately bring them closer than either thought possible. After the disastrous events of the charity gala, Ethan knew he had to act fast, not just to repair the damage done to Mia's reputation, but also to prove to her that their connection was real. He couldn't stand by and let people tear her down with lies and assumptions. This wasn't just about clearing her name, it was about showing her she mattered, more than gossip, more than judgment, and more than the superficial world he lived in. Ethan started small, but deliberate. The next morning, he took to social media himself, posting a heartfelt message alongside one of the leaked photos of him and Mia at the gala. In the caption, he wrote, "This is Mia. She's strong, kind, and incredibly talented. She works tirelessly to support her family while chasing her dream of becoming a writer. If you have something negative to say about her, ask yourself why you feel threatened by someone who simply wants to live her best life. Let's focus on lifting each other up instead of tearing people down." The post went viral within hours. Fans and followers flooded the comments section with messages of support for Mia, praising Ethan for standing up for her. Some even shared their own stories of overcoming adversity, creating a ripple effect of positivity online. For every cruel comment, there were dozens of uplifting ones reminding Mia and everyone else that kindness could still prevail. But Ethan didn't stop there. Using his influence, he reached out to local news outlets and talk shows, asking if they'd be willing to feature Mia's story. At first, Mia was hesitant. "Why would anyone care about my life?" she asked when Ethan broached the idea. "I'm nobody special." "You're wrong," Ethan replied firmly. "You're extraordinary, and the world needs to hear your voice." With some encouragement, Mia agreed to participate in an interview segment for a popular morning show. Nervous but determined, she sat across from the host, answering questions about her journey, how she juggled 2 jobs to take care of her brother, how she dreamed of writing books despite the odds stacked against her, and how she refused to let negativity define her. Her honesty resonated with viewers, many of whom reached out afterward to thank her for inspiring them to keep going during tough times. Behind the scenes, Ethan worked tirelessly to rebuild trust with Mia. He visited her apartment regularly, bringing handwritten letters filled with apologies, reflections, and promises to do better. One letter read, "I'm sorry I dragged you into my world without considering how hard it might be for you. You've taught me what true strength looks like, and I'll spend every day earning your trust again if that's what it takes." Mia kept these letters tucked inside a drawer, reading them whenever doubt crept in. Slowly but surely, she began to see that Ethan wasn't just paying lip service, he genuinely cared about her. His actions spoke louder than words. When he learned that her younger brother was struggling to afford textbooks for college, Ethan quietly arranged for a scholarship, fund to cover his expenses. He made sure Mia found out only after everything was finalized, wanting her to feel supported without feeling indebted. Their conversations grew deeper as they spent more time together. They talked about their fears, their hopes, and the things that kept them up at night. Ethan admitted that he'd always been afraid of vulnerability, scared of letting anyone get too close because of the pressure that came with his wealth and status. "People either want something from me or judge me based on my bank account," he confessed one evening as they strolled through a quiet park. "But with you, it's different. You see me, the real me, not the title or the money." Mia nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. "It's scary, isn't it? Letting someone in when you're used to handling everything on your own." "It is," Ethan agreed, "but it's worth it, because now I know what it feels like to truly connect with someone." For Mia, opening up was equally challenging. She'd spent years guarding her heart, convinced that no one from Ethan's world could ever understand hers. Yet the more time they spent together, the harder it became to deny the bond forming between them. "I guess I've always been afraid of getting hurt," she admitted softly during one of their late-night talks. "Afraid that someone like you wouldn't really care about someone like me." Ethan stopped walking and turned to face her, his expression serious. "Listen to me. I care about you more than I've cared about anyone in a long time. And yes, we come from different worlds, but that doesn't mean we can't find common ground. Love isn't about where you start. It's about where you choose to go together." His words struck a chord deep within Mia. For so long she'd believed that love was reserved for fairy tales, something ordinary people like her weren't meant to experience. But here was Ethan, standing in front of her, proving that love could exist outside the boundaries of wealth, class, and circumstance. As weeks turned into months, their relationship continued to grow stronger. Ethan encouraged Mia to pursue her, writing, offering to help however he could. He introduced her to editors, literary agents, and writers who inspired her. Meanwhile, Mia challenged Ethan to slow down and appreciate the little things in life, to savor moments rather than rush through them. Together, they balanced each other out, filling the gaps in their lives with laughter, understanding, and unwavering support. One evening, as they sat side by side watching the sunset, Ethan turned to Mia and said, "You've changed me in ways I never thought possible. Before you, I was just going through the motions, chasing success without really knowing why. Now I wake up every day excited to see where this journey will take us." Mia smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "Me too," she whispered. "I never thought I'd find someone who makes me feel like I can conquer the world. But here we are." In that moment, surrounded by golden light and the promise of tomorrow, they both knew their story was far from over. It was a tale of resilience, redemption, and the power of love to bridge even the widest divides. And though challenges lay ahead, they faced them together, ready to write the next chapter of their lives hand in hand. Months had passed since the night of the charity gala, and life for Mia and Ethan had transformed in ways neither of them could have imagined. What began as an accidental meeting at a cafe had blossomed into something far greater, a partnership, built on trust, respect, and shared dreams. Their journey hadn't been easy. It was filled with challenges, doubts, and moments where they questioned whether their love could withstand the pressures of their vastly different worlds. But through it all, they held on to each other, proving that true connection goes beyond wealth, status, or background. For Mia, the biggest change came when she finally decided to take a leap of faith. With Ethan's encouragement, and after countless late nights spent typing away on her laptop, she completed her first novel. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. A heartfelt story inspired by her own struggles and triumphs, woven together, with characters who felt like old friends. When she showed the manuscript to Ethan, he read it cover to cover in one sitting, his eyes welling up with tears by the end. "You're going to change lives with this," he told her, his voice thick with emotion. "It's beautiful." Mia laughed nervously, still unsure if anyone else would feel the same way. But Ethan didn't let her doubt linger. He introduced her to a trusted editor he knew from his network, someone who believed in nurturing new talent. The editor loved the book and helped Mia polish it until it shone. A few months later, the manuscript landed on the desk of a major publishing house, and to Mia's astonishment, they offered her a contract. The day the book hit shelves, Mia felt like she was living in a dream. She stood in a bookstore staring at the display featuring her name in bold letters across the cover. Her heart raced as strangers picked up copies, flipping through pages she'd poured her soul into. That night, she sat alone in her tiny apartment, clutching the first copy she'd signed, tears streaming down her face. All those years of sacrifice, all those sleepless nights working double shifts, it had led her here. Ethan was there every step of the way, cheering her on without ever trying to overshadow her success. On the day of her book launch party, he rented out a cozy venue downtown and invited everyone who had supported Mia along the way. Her brother, close friends, even some of the regular customers from the cafe where they'd met. As Mia stood on stage reading an excerpt from her novel, she caught Ethan's eye in the crowd. His smile said everything words couldn't: pride, admiration, and unwavering love. The book became a bestseller within weeks, earning rave reviews from critics and readers alike. People connected with its themes of resilience, hope, and finding light in the darkest moments. Mia gave interviews, attended literary festivals, and even won awards for her debut work. At one prestigious ceremony, she stood on stage holding a trophy, her hands trembling as she addressed the audience. "I never thought I'd be standing here tonight," she began, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "This journey hasn't been easy. It's been messy, uncertain, and full of lessons I didn't expect to learn. But none of this would have been possible without the people who believed in me, especially one person who reminded me that my story mattered. Thank you, Ethan, for seeing me when I couldn't see myself." In the front row, Ethan rose to his feet, clapping louder than anyone else. His eyes glistened with tears as he watched Mia bask in the spotlight she so deserved. For him, this moment was more than just a celebration of her success. It was proof that love can inspire greatness, that two people from completely different walks of life can come together to create something extraordinary. As Mia's career took off, Ethan made changes in his own life too. Inspired by her courage, he reevaluated his priorities, stepping back from the relentless grind of running a tech empire to focus on what truly mattered: relationships, passions, and making a positive impact. He launched a foundation dedicated to supporting aspiring writers and artists from underprivileged backgrounds, naming it after Mia's favorite quote from her book, "Every voice deserves to be heard." Their relationship deepened with time, becoming a partnership rooted in mutual growth. They learned to navigate the complexities of blending their worlds, finding beauty in their differences rather than letting them divide them. Ethan introduced Mia to fine dining and art galleries, while Mia taught him the joy of thrift store finds and spontaneous road trips. Together, they created a life that honored both their pasts and their shared future. One crisp autumn morning, Ethan surprised Mia with tickets to Paris, a city she'd always dreamed of visiting. As they strolled hand in hand along the Seine, surrounded by golden leaves and the hum of street musicians, Ethan stopped suddenly and turned to her. Pulling a small velvet box from his pocket, he knelt down on one knee. "Mia," he said, his voice shaking slightly, "you've shown me what it means to live fully, to love deeply, and to chase dreams no matter how impossible they seem. Will you spend the rest of your life teaching me how to be better?" Mia's breath caught in her chest as she stared at him, tears streaming down her face. "Yes," she whispered, pulling him up into a tight embrace. 1,000 times yes. Their wedding was intimate yet unforgettable, held in a sunlit garden with close friends and family looking on. Mia wore a simple white dress she'd found at a vintage shop, while Ethan looked dapper in a classic suit. As they exchanged vows, promising to support each other through every challenge and celebrate every triumph, it was clear to everyone present that theirs was a love meant to last. Years later, as they sat together on a porch overlooking rolling hills, watching their children play in the yard, Mia reflected on how far they'd come. From that chaotic day in the cafe to this peaceful moment of contentment, their story was a testament to the power of second chances, resilience, and believing in the impossible. "You know," Ethan said softly, wrapping an arm around her shoulders, "I used to think success was about money and achievements, but now I know. It's about finding someone who makes your heart whole." Mia smiled, leaning into him. "And I used to think love was just for fairy tales. But here we are, living proof that happily ever afters do exist." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, they sat in silence, grateful for the life they'd built together. It hadn't been perfect, but it had been real, and sometimes that was enough. Life after the wedding was a beautiful blend of adventure and everyday moments, each one adding layers to the story Mia and Ethan were writing together. Their days weren't always glamorous. Sometimes they argued over whose turn it was to do the dishes or how to handle their kids' school projects. But those small, imperfect moments became the foundation of something deep and lasting. It was in these ordinary details that they found the most extraordinary kind of happiness. Ethan's decision to step back from the relentless pace of his tech empire allowed him more time to focus on what truly mattered: family. He started coaching his son's little league team, cheering louder than any other parent during games. On weekends, he'd take the whole family hiking, pointing out constellations in the night sky as they sat around a campfire. For someone who had once measured success by quarterly earnings reports, Ethan now found fulfillment in simpler things, like teaching his daughter how to ride a bike or helping Mia plant vegetables in their backyard garden. Mia, meanwhile, continued to thrive as an author. Her second novel, an emotional tale about forgiveness and redemption, was even more successful than her first, earning her international recognition. Despite her growing fame, she remained grounded, often reminding herself of where she came from. She made it a point to visit local schools and libraries, encouraging young writers to tell their stories, no matter how daunting the process might seem. "Your voice matters," she'd say during these talks. her eyes shining with conviction. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. One day, while speaking at a community center in a low-income neighborhood, Mia met a teenage girl named Lily, who reminded her so much of herself at that age. Lily loved writing but felt trapped by circumstances beyond her control. Her parents worked long hours just to make ends meet, leaving her responsible for caring for her younger siblings. After the event, Lily approached Mia hesitantly, clutching a notebook filled with poems and short stories. "I don't know if I'm good enough," Lily admitted quietly, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "But writing is the only thing that makes me feel free." Mia knelt down to meet her gaze, smiling warmly. "You're already good enough. Keep writing no matter what anyone says. If you ever need help, here's my number." She scribbled it on a piece of paper and handed it to Lily, along with a signed copy of her book. When Mia told Ethan about Lily later that evening, his eyes lit up with excitement. "We should start a mentorship program through your foundation," he suggested. "Pair aspiring writers like Lily with professionals who can guide them, not just technically but emotionally too." And so they did. The program quickly gained traction, connecting talented individuals from underserved communities with mentors who believed in their potential. Watching it grow gave Mia immense satisfaction. She knew firsthand how life-changing such support could be. As their children grew older, Mia and Ethan instilled in them the values they held dear: kindness, perseverance, and the importance of giving back. They encouraged their kids to pursue their passions, whether it was music, science, or art, without fear of failure. Dinner table conversations were lively debates about books, movies, and current events, with everyone chiming in enthusiastically. Even when disagreements arose, as they inevitably did, their home was always filled with laughter and love. Of course, challenges still cropped up from time to time. Balancing careers, parenting, and personal aspirations wasn't easy, especially given their very different backgrounds. There were moments when old insecurities resurfaced for Mia, the fear that Ethan's world would someday swallow hers whole. For Ethan, the worry that he'd never fully understand the sacrifices Mia had made before they met. But instead of letting these doubts drive a wedge between them, they tackled them head-on, using open communication and empathy to bridge the gaps. One particularly tough period came when Ethan's company faced a major scandal involving unethical practices by a former executive. Though Ethan had stepped away from daily operations, his name was dragged into the headlines, painting him in a negative light despite his innocence. Overnight, public opinion turned against him, with critics questioning everything from his business ethics to his character. Mia stood by him unwaveringly throughout the ordeal, offering comfort and perspective. "This isn't about them," she told him one night as they sat side by side on the couch, scrolling through endless news articles. "It's about us. About who we are and what we've built together. Don't let their noise drown out your truth." Her words gave Ethan strength. Together they weathered the storm, issuing transparent statements, cooperating fully with investigations, and eventually clearing his name. Through it all, Mia's steadfast support reminded Ethan why he'd fallen in love with her in the first place. She saw the best in him even when the rest of the world couldn't. Years passed and their bond only grew stronger. On their 10th anniversary, Ethan surprised Mia with a trip back to Paris, retracing the steps of their honeymoon. As they strolled along the Seine once again, hand in hand, Ethan pulled out a leather-bound journal engraved with gold lettering. "Our story. I thought we could write it together," he said, his voice soft. "Not just for us, but for our kids, and maybe even grandkids someday, so they'll know where we came from and how far we've come." Tears welled in Mia's eyes as she flipped through the blank pages. "I'd love that," she whispered, leaning her head against his shoulder. "Because this isn't just our story. It's proof that love can overcome anything." Back home, they began filling the journal with memories, ticket stubs from their first date, photos of their wedding day, notes scrawled in both their handwriting. Each entry was a testament to their journey, the highs, the lows, and everything in between. Looking back, neither Mia nor Ethan could have predicted how their Lives would intertwine. What started as a mix-up at a cafe had evolved into a partnership rooted in trust, respect, and shared dreams. They had proven that love doesn't adhere to rules or boundaries. It simply finds a way even when the odds seem insurmountable. And as they sat together under the stars one quiet evening, watching their grandchildren chase fireflies in the yard, they smiled knowingly. Life hadn't been perfect, but it had been theirs. A tapestry woven with laughter, tears, and countless second chances. In the end, that was all that mattered.